Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and today we've got the pleasure of welcoming a dynamic and inspiring guest to the show. Franco, known to many as the Franco TV, is a passionate Catholic evangelist, singer, songwriter, and content creator. Through his engaging presence on social media platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, Franco has been a beacon of faith, reaching thousands with his creative and powerful messages. Franco's journey in evangelization is marked by his dedication to spreading Catholicism in a culture that often seems hostile to Catholic values, to say the least. His innovative approach to sharing the faith, whether through music, videos, or personal testimonies, has resonated deeply with audiences around the world, especially the younger generation. And this morning, we'll be discussing the challenges of evangelizing in a culture that often despises Catholics, the role of the Holy Spirit in his mission, and how he addresses the common debate between science and faith. Good morning and welcome to the show, Franco.
Hey, how you doing, Keith?
Blessed. Thank you for asking. Now, before we dive into it, I know you weren't always Catholic. I'm curious, what was the moment that made you say, okay, I'm converting?
So I wasn't always a practicing Catholic. So I was raised Catholic, but like very, very vaguely. Like I don't think I even knew what a sin was during high school. I always say that. And I explored a lot of different religions. Like I just considered them. I actually practiced maybe New Age spirituality for a bit. But not too didn't go too far deep into it. I casually considered Islam back in high school.
Wow.
And eventually I also considered Judaism and when I was considering Christianity as well. But eventually I started doing Bible study with this Protestant pastor, I believe, who was at this campus of my friend. And that kind of built like a good relationship that I started building a relationship with God in that way. And that was, I mean, I just like a lot of the stuff that was in the Bible was just very like, yo, this is like what I already agree with. and like because I was getting into like a lot of politics, especially stuff with regarding, self-help and stuff like this. And eventually I mean, I just got into like a huge like, rabbit hole with that. And to keep it short, because I could go on about this for hours because I still have yet to do a whole testimony video on this, and people have at least one person I know has asked. But I'm pretty sure like a lot of people probably want a testimony video, but I haven't done it. I'm not gonna do it until like I get everything like straight because I want to make sure like I don't want to leave anything out. And so,
Yeah.
and in summary, I a lot of good peers in my life corrected me on my misconceptions about Catholicism, and it just got to the point where where I thought to myself that I need to take a leap of faith. I still had questions, but like obviously you're never gonna know like all the answers, but you can get to a sufficient amount of information where you can take a leap, and especially if it's more information that's in pro of something rather than against. So that's kind of how I ended up here, and since then it's been a great ride.
Well, we'll be patiently awaiting that testimony yourself. But as someone who actively evangelizes through social media, what are some of the biggest challenges you face when sharing the Catholic faith in this culture that we live in that's incredibly hostile towards it?
The algorithm. I mean, it's pretty sometimes it's not exactly my best friend, but I'm really glad that like I mean they're making updates that a lot of people might see like as not really good updates, but I think they're good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but something that's challenging essentially would be uh I guess simplifying your ideas, simplifying what you're trying to communicate, which sometimes while not conceding on the message itself, because sometimes you need to be a little more specific, sometimes you actually need to
Yeah.
keep going a little, go more detailed. However,
Right.
there is an art to being simple, and I would say that, I mean, I read this in the books called Scruples and Sainthood by Trent Beatty because I struggle with scrupulosity, and it talks about how God is very simple. It really is, and I've always thought, and since then I've thought of it like this. I'm like, okay, God is simple. It's just humans with our flawed intelligence that we make everything complicated, and then when we like question like the intelligence of God is when we really open the doors to like kind of just the magnitude of how simple it really is, but also trying to make sense of it in a way. I don't know, it seems kind of contradictory, but in essence, something that's good with marketing, something that's good with humanity in general that really sticks with people is simplicity. And so I mean, that would be a huge challenge. Essentially, that's a huge challenge, especially when we're
Yeah.
trying to like. Because I mean, again, like, there's a reason why memes are so powerful. Memes are powerful, and it's kind of stupid, but it's because they're they're like a lot of information jam packed into a type of joke, image type
Hmm.
joke, short, concise image type joke. And so that really can stick to people's brains. And so now people might not need to like get like a whole minute or 5 minute long dissertation on it. They just remember that image that communicates that message. And so, and it kind of makes sense how kind of we humans have survived. And it's just, yeah, I mean, again, there's power in simplicity, and that is probably a
Hmm.
big challenge, especially when dealing with 2,000 years of church knowledge that is very, very solidified, divinely solidified.
Yeah. Well, you find a way to meet the balance between being clear but not watering down the message. So that's really good that you're able to do that. And even
Thank
in
you.
living in, of course, in this secular world, it's really, well, I would say challenging to find some strategies to engage in the culture that simply often rejects our faith or simply misunderstands Catholicism. What did you say? Like, what strategies do you find most effective in that? Like, as far as people that just don't understand Catholicism.
Um, well, you have to know your audience, and this is really speaking from a marketing perspective. Is that
Mm-hmm.
like, and this is I mean, marketing goes into like literally everything. Like every single person does marketing to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're going to try to evangelize. I know that sounds like a little like consumerist, which I'm not a big fan of consumerism culture, right? But it is the case that you have to make sure you know how to deal with people, right? I mean, who knew
Right.
people better than Jesus, God Himself, and so. Um, you have to know who you're dealing with, who your audience is. I like to a lot of my videos are actually inspired by people that I know in my real life. Whenever I make like a certain video about, let's say, like, homosexual activity, right? Like I did recently. Because I want to like, I don't want to fall into that trap. Because with being simple is good, right? Being simple is good, but some people kind of want to take a shortcut with being simple, and that means like, oh, I just have to be provocative and not care how I frame things, which is really like it's just very lazy. It's not using your intelligence
Mm-hmm.
to be I guess clever about it and be like careful about things and gentle. Um, and so like that's really like the challenge is like can you be simple while also being charitable and like actually persuasive and not just throwing out ideas out into the cosmos and then be like, well, all right, I'll just that's it on my end. It's like knowledge is not enough. You have to be intelligent about the knowledge itself, and so
Right.
and mature about it as well, which I used to not do all the time. And so I mean, when I think of a video like the last one that I wrote about like homosexual activity and how it's harmful, I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, if I'm a person who is struggling with this sin or maybe is very deep into it and not not
Mm-hmm.
against and just very or a person that doesn't think it's bad and a person that's like that has family members that are homosexual, I'm like, how would I communicate this if I was talking to them straight face to face, right? How
Yeah.
could I actually let them know that I actually really do care about them and that I'm not like I'm not just some person that's like, well, I'm right and here's why I'm right, right?
Right.
How can I communicate that I actually do care about them? And so that's kind of how I view it. Like that's really like how I managed to do like a lot of my. I mean, because again, uh, the knowledge aspect, it's not. And I'm not. This is like this is coming from me as a Gen Z person, right, who grew up with the internet. I can assure you that most Gen Z people can agree with this that acquiring knowledge in the age of the internet is not hard. That's
Yeah.
probably like one of the easiest things to do especially if you know where to look, right? So acquiring knowledge is not very hard, right? I mean, unless you're like extremely conditioned and biased because of your, super like, degenerate upbringing or whatever, like maybe then, but like still for the average person, there's a lot of, it's out there and it's very easy to acquire. And so the challenge there really comes with, okay, can you actually sell people on this? Can you actually persuade people that yes, this is in their best interest? Yes, this is love. This is true love, and not just me being correct and wanting to prove that I'm correct and you're wrong. Like, how can you
Mm-hmm.
best get people on your side, get people on the side of Christ, rather than being like, rather than making it feel like you're imposing Christ onto them, right? How to make it
Mm-hmm.
seem like we're both on the same team, rather than me versus you in this battle of ideas. That's kind of
Right.
how I like, that's kind of I think that's why I feel like a lot of my stuff tends to be, and I have gotten responses that it's very that I've gotten effective messages from this, and I'm very happy with it because it's not, when I write these things, I'm like, I'm making sure like, okay, I'm thinking of someone who I know would not agree with this, but I want to make sure that even if by the end of the video they still don't agree with it, they don't see me as some bigot, hateful person. However, obviously, there still will be people that might think that. Of course, you can't control that, but you can lessen those chances. Definitely, you can, and especially if it's unnecessarily like provocative or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Now, just a few moments left. What type of advice would you give our listeners who might have children who are Gen Zers, or maybe they know a Gen Zer that's maybe having some challenges with the faith versus science conversation? What type of advice would you give them?
I would say that you have to be very bold on the truth. And when I mean bold, I mean again with charity, of course. Like you can't like with science and the faith. Well, first off, you do want to go. I mean, the knowledge there is going to be very, very important, of course, because like at that point, like if you're already in grounds to be able to talk about this, and it's appropriate for you to talk about this sort of stuff, you want to be able to be well versed in the science of it. And so you want to get good Catholic books on the neuroscience against pornography, or like the neuroscience on why premarital sex is like bad. You also want to get like just psychology stuff that's maybe approved by Catholic priests, or that is written by Catholic priests or stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff with and with science. I think a lot of people might tie that with like philosophy as well, and that's what I like to do a lot in my page. Like I like to do a lot of stuff with philosophy, because that way you don't just appeal to like the Protestants, but you also
Right.
appeal to secular people, like just people that, because again,
Mhm.
I could be like, well, the Pope matters because uh this Bible verse says this, right? It's like, okay, well, I just cut the people that might be sold on my message, and like by a huge percentage, because not many people care about what the Bible thinks, especially in our culture, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that's not important. It is important. Of course, we want to prove our stuff biblically, because of course the Catholic book is literally going to support our message, and we want to,
Right.
for the Protestants who of course think that the Bible is not a is not Catholic, or that we're not or that Catholics are against the Bible. So we obviously want to clear that up. But in dealing with science and philosophy, like that is going to appeal to way way more people. Just
Yeah,
as a
I
numbers
agree.
game.
And we're running against the
Mhm.
clock here. I'm so sorry, Franco. We're going to have you on the show again to go even further in detail in the whole science and faith conversation. But thank you so much for joining us. We can find
Yeah.
more of Franco on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just go to @thefranco TV. And that's it for Morning Joy, where truth matters. Hey, we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. Central, right here on Morning Joy, where truth matters. Until then, God bless and make it a joyful day.